Welcome to the Osceola's YouTube channel. Happy Wednesday. We hope you're having a great week and looking forward to Florida State being back out on the football field Saturday against Memphis. It's been a long bye week. We think it's been a good bye week for the Seminoles. We know as a fan you are looking forward to the game at Doak and that you have questions about that fan experience. So that's where we're starting Wednesday's show. We have Osceola publisher Jerry Kutz, editor Bob Ferrante. And yeah, we're doing a lot of football shows this week. We talk football on Tuesday extensively. We'll talk football extensively on Thursday. I'll even ask Jerry some of his thoughts later on about what he's looking forward to on the field. But let's kind of focus off the field for a little bit. A lot of discussion, especially when you have a loss, about the fan experience. Music was really loud. Music choices weren't great. Jumbotron had some pixels or little bit of an outage there. The clock wasn't working first quarter. It was a first game for everybody at Doak Campbell Stadium against Boston College. But Jerry, I think this is the challenge of having a debut night sometimes, and then you take action about where you can fix, where you can improve. Let's start with some of the easier ones, maybe, before we go into the discussion about the Marching Chiefs. The easy ones are maybe the scoreboard, the music, the volume. Let's talk about some of those easy ones. What do you think Florida State's going to do to improve that version, that aspect of the experience?
Well, the first thing, Bob, I did that for 19 years when I worked for the Boosters. I was on a team that worked on the fan experience. And we looked at it as a weekend experience, starting with Friday, with the block party and tailgating, and then the game, so that you were giving your fans from out of town a full weekend experience. And so Florida State has always taken this very serious. You can't necessarily depend on the performance of your team on Saturday, but you should be able to depend on the fan experience surrounding the game. And so I know Florida State takes it very serious, and I know what my experiences were during those 19 years. And I've touched base with some of the people that are at Florida State, and nothing has really changed. It's the same process. So let me start, and we can kind of chop this up a little bit. But it begins with testing. You have a scoreboard now that's 7 or 8 years old, which doesn't seem old to me. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I was involved in installing that scoreboard the same year we put in the Champions Club. And we had sound difficulties. Anybody that was in the Champions Club that first year knows that first game, people were stuffing tissue papers in their ears and hot dogs and whatever they could find, because you thought your ears were going to explode. And I bring that bad memory up because we had tested that sound system. It had only been in a couple of weeks, but we thought we had it dialed in. But on game day, when you load the house with people, it's different than when it's empty. And so I empathize with the first game that you could have some difficulties. And in their case this year, they had some power outages right before the game. And some of them, I would venture to say, nobody told me this, I'm just from a construction experience, I would venture to bet some of them are a result of all the construction that's going on the west side of the stadium. And again, you test it. So, I know because I went out there and videotaped for the readers to see the progress on Doak. Throughout the month of August, I went out there on the field 2 or 3 times to take progress shots on the putting up the temporary bleachers. And each time I went out there, they had that scoreboard on. They were cooking it in, is the term they use, because those components, you can't leave them, for 9 months and expect they work. So I'm laughing because of the thought of, you have to go out in there and get, like the pigeon nests out of the scoreboard. But, you have, you turn the scoreboard on, you cook it in, and you test everything you can possibly test. But on game day, the television trucks roll in, and there's a whole lot of, press up in the box, plugging stuff into various things. And they wound up having a power outage right before the game began, that affected some pixelation on the scoreboard, and also it knocked the clock out. So they got the clock thing fixed immediately, but they couldn't activate it until the quarter ended. Okay, so I think the big, to cut to the chase, they had a bad first game. Things happened. Right. And as we did when I was there, you send out a survey after every game, and you get customer feedback. And, we would get about a 53% open rate on every survey we ever sent out. So people will open it. And a surprising number of people will respond, especially if you've lost the game.
Funny how that happens, right?
Yeah, the ice isn't cold enough. But no, and it's good feedback. And I was happy to hear when I was talking to the people in the offices over there in the game day operations group, that they took it very seriously. And what they told me is that a couple of things happened. One being that the music was just too loud. I mean, it really was. And the second thing was the house music. They scripted, and they went off script, during the game. And so they've remedied both those situations. So you'll hear the music won't be as loud. In fact, it may be they'd rather err on the side of it being not loud enough, but they're going to get that right. Now, let me just say, back from the story I told about 2016, why that relates to today is that you have 20,000 less people. And anybody who knows acoustics knows that sound doesn't bounce off of a person near as good as it bounces off concrete. And so rather than 20,000 in the stands in that west side, they've got concrete. And so that sound is bouncing off the concrete, off the press box glass. And you kind of have to live it one time for the sound engineers to be able to fix it. But it will be fixed. That's the scoreboard will be right. The clock is already right. And the sound is that's really simple to fix. Once you've been through it, you can't fix it in game, but once the game is over, you can redirect speakers and the speaker cabinets, and there's none of it's easy, but it can be done in the span of 7 days. And I think they found the volume control knob.
Well, I think you were also saying today at practice that these are fixed speakers. These are not, say, your speakers in the home man cave where they're easily adjustable, where you can just maybe tilt, or you've got a remote control to do little subtle changes. Yes, these are changes that you can do during a bye week. You've got time.
Yeah.
But it's not things that can happen on a fly during a football game.
No, those cabinets are huge on either side of that big video board. and there's hundreds of speakers in those cabinets, and they're welded into fixed positions to optimize the sound around the stadium. And I speak of this from knowledge that, it's not one sound for the whole stadium. I mean, there's zones of the stadium that it can sound perfect at the 50 and awful in the corner of the end zone.
Right.
And so they direct those speakers to try to even the sound quality to the whole stadium. And that's still a nightmare for me. But when I was reading those posts, I was like, oh God, am I glad I'm not in that role, right now. But it is challenging, but they'll fix it. And the reason I say they'll fix it is because they're committed to fixing it. They own it, and they're on it. Now, I wanted to explain something else. You were going to ask me about the Chiefs, that portion of it. Is it time for that portion?
Yeah, I don't want to read Mike Norvell's full comment, but he was asked after practice on Wednesday. I'll say you can read the full comment from him on the Osceola.com, FloridaState.Rivals.com. But in part, very much supportive of the Chiefs. They want to honor the tradition. They love the Chiefs. It's a good relationship. And he explained a couple of things about, I think he said Kalen DeLoach, Tatum Bethune had a desire last year to have a little bit of music maybe spark and then lead into the Chiefs playing. That was one of the things that he explained. But again, Jerry, you've got a wealth of experience in those meetings where the game day experience is the full topic of discussion. And the marching Chiefs, I think one of the things you mentioned is there's a time where they can play. There's a time where they're going down to the field or coming back up to the field and the football game is going. So I don't want to ruin the big picture of what you've written, and we'll have a story on the Osceola explain this, but logistically, the Chiefs are not available for the full, say, 60 minutes, but there are definite moments where I think the coaches would say, we want the Chiefs playing. The fans
Absolutely.
would say, we want the Chiefs playing. And the players on defense especially would say, we really need the Chiefs playing. So go ahead.
So let's be, perfectly clear. Everybody loves the Chiefs.
Absolutely.
They're a huge part of the game day experience. And so when you have a game ops meeting, they play a very central role. And, it's their show as well as it is a football show. And you have to, kind of balance, how does that work? And of course, you have things that need to be on-field presentations that have to occur. So people might be surprised at how many people actually come into a game day ops meeting. You have, campus police, you have the county police, you have members from the band, you got, Mike Norvell's representatives, because football, there's certain things they want. Bill Durham's, renegade team, there's the president's office, because they have presentations during the game. The recruiting office, because they got prospects pregame on the field. And I've seen 100 people in the room.
Really? 100?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's a big number, but yeah, there's a lot of, each team may have 2 or 3 people, but
Sure.
there's a lot of different moving pieces to a game day ops. And, not to mention security, the ticket taking representative, the concessions representative. There's a lot of people. I think if I actually sat down and made a list, there's probably 25 parties involved. And so you're trying to coordinate all of it. And, you have like Hall of Fame weekend, you've got the Hall of Fame committee where you're recognizing the Hall of Fame members. It just goes on and on. So it's very important, and a great deal of time is put into it. And some bad memories are flashing through my mind. But
I was gonna say, don't cuss here, Jerry. Don't cuss.
no, I won't. But and it's collegial,
Right.
even though there are competing agendas or interests. But it's very collegial because it's like any team sport. You have to have cooperation, and there's got to be gives and take. But I want to go back to the band. The band is such a big part of it. And I want people to understand, there's no villain in this story. As I've read letters and posts, there's some people that want to make the administration out to be a villain, or that, or to make the marching chiefs a villain, that they don't play enough. And those things can't be further from the truth. I mean, you try to strike a balance. And so I think for our listeners, this is good, and our readers, I think I've got a little bit of important stuff to share with you that might help you understand how it works. I've read also, let me preface this by saying I've also read people say that Alabama doesn't play house music, that traditional college football, it's just the band and there's no house music. Well, that's not true. I've researched it. I've been in those stadiums, and you'll hear Alabama playing. They've got 2 or 3 songs they like to play, like Sweet Home Alabama, and that they play through the house music. We all know, if we've been to Gainesville, that University of Florida plays, I Won't Back Down. I mean, that's a big deal. And they start their fourth quarter with that, the same way Florida State starts its fourth quarter with the Smokey and the Bandit theme song. And I think our fans enjoy that song, and I know the people in Gainesville, and you can't duplicate that with a band sitting in the stands. So, that's one example. But the bigger example that I mentioned to you at practice is, and I double back on this. You have the Marching Chiefs do a wonderful pregame show, and it's integrated with Bill Durham and the Renegade Osceola team. So the band stays on the field while, Osceola approaches and plants the spear. Okay, so the first 3 to 5 minutes of the first quarter, the band is moving from the playing surface into their seating. They can't play even if they needed to, right? So that early part of the first quarter, you depend on house music. Okay, you're dependent on it.
Especially if your defense is out there first and needs a third down stop, right? I mean, these are situations.
Exactly. So the house is instructed. They will cue the band. If the band doesn't respond by playing, then the house music will fill the dead air. All right. With 7 minutes left in the half of the third quarter, the Marching Chiefs leave their seats and they start to head down to do their wonderful halftime show, right? They're not available. If the defense is trying to stop the other team from scoring, the house music is going to start, defense, and playing music to inspire the defense and the crowd. So now we're missing the Chiefs 3 to 5 minutes in the first quarter, 7 minutes in the second quarter, where you're dependent. And this is true in every stadium. You go in the third quarter, you got the same situation. They come off the field at halftime. By the time they get in their seats and do all that, you've lost about the first 5 minutes of the first quarter, and you depend on house music. Now there's other things to keep in mind. When our team has the ball, when we're on offense, we don't want the band playing.
Right.
And we don't want any house music either, right? So that's about the only time you're going to hear dead, because you want it quiet for your offense. There's a couple of exceptions to that. If there's a first down, when Florida State gets a first down and the guy goes, Florida State, first down. And of course, he's in the game ops meeting too. Then the band plays, right?
Right.
That's the only time on offense the band is supposed to play is when we get a first down or when we're coming out of a TV timeout. Okay. Then the band can play when we're on offense. So if you think about that, that's 30 minutes of the game they're not playing. And the other thing about that I want to make people aware of is because they are supposed to play coming out of a timeout, of a first down, we did not have a first down in the first quarter this week.
Yes. Small problem.
And the other thing we went back and researched is that last year we averaged 20 first downs a game. This year we're averaging 12. So, you're going to have less marching chiefs because of that. You'll have less house music as well because of that. So I hope that people can kind of understand that and wrap their head around it. You're hearing less of the marching chiefs, partly because the team isn't performing at the high, they're not getting as many first downs. And the other thing I want to say, and I came to learn this after I'd been in the job a number of years, is the marching chiefs are students and they're volunteers. And they do it because they love it. And when you as a fan and I as a FSU guy, when I come to the game, when the team is playing good, I jump off my feet and I get excited,
Of course.
And when the team isn't playing good, I'm not that excited. The members of the marching chiefs are no different. When FSU is playing great, they get excited and they play more. And when the team isn't playing good, there's a tendency not to jump up real quick, know?
Yep.
And if they don't jump up real quick, the house music kicks in. And so I know that the band they're professionals, even though they're students and they're volunteers. And I think they try to pull the team through when they're not doing particularly well. But my experience over the years is that they're human. And so I think if the same things that will spark our football team to better play on the field, if we start making some big plays and we have more touchdowns, you're going to hear the Chiefs a lot more.
Agree.
And I think it feeds on itself. And that's why the Chiefs are so important to Mike, is because, when things are going good, it snowballs. And so that's where we're at. But, please don't think there's a villain in this. I think the Chiefs do an absolutely fantastic job, and nobody ever tells them not to play. Common sense tells them not to play when our team has the football, but no, they're encouraged to play.
Yeah, I think going back to what you said there are very important windows of the football game where the Chiefs are not available. So you mentioned, I think, let's say it's a 3-minute window, start of the game, 7 minutes, end of that second quarter, 5 or so, start of that third. You're talking about what, 15
minutes
so out of the first 35 minutes of football. That's a pretty important window to get. I know we all debate momentum and the importance of momentum in athletics. But in college football, where athletes need confidence and need that home crowd and need the Chiefs, logistically, it just doesn't work. I think also lost is to some extent Mike Norvell financially stepped up to help the Chiefs with fundraising, as far as getting a number of them to Ireland.
Right.
A number of the community, obviously, the community jumped up and massively supported. I know David Plack, who lives down the street from me. David's a great guy. He said
Sure is.
through the great give, there were so many Seminole fans, alumni, boosters who stepped up and helped to get a lot of the juniors and seniors from Tallahassee to Ireland. It wasn't the full band, but it was a lot of marching Chiefs over there in Dublin. So,
And I think part of the reason it wasn't a full band was because, there's some freshmen that weren't in school yet. So
logistically, it just doesn't work.
logistically,
Yeah.
they're not enrolled. I don't think they could have gone.
Right.
So,
Right. So I think that's a good, Jerry used the term, not an excuse. It's a reason. This is an explainer. This is not
yeah.
it's more to rationalize, just so you guys can wrap your head around some of the different factors there. We've kind of gone through the game day experience. And I think before we dive into a little bit of our fun stories that we've had over the last week on the business of college athletics, I know you're itching for a little bit of football discussion. So I will ask Jerry you this. I've been thinking about it a little bit. Beyond leadership, beyond want to, think about one thing that you want to see from the Florida State football players. Again, noon against Memphis on Saturday. If there's one thing you can see on either side of the ball, or if you want to pick one on each side, what's something that you are walking into that stadium Saturday morning saying, I want to see this?
Win.
Man, I want to see heart and
I don't
leadership.
care how they do it.
How about defending the run? How about
No, I'm going to take you serious here in a minute, but winning cures everything. And I think, it is like you said, it's a team that is really shockingly young. I mean, I didn't realize the inexperience or the lack of leadership that this team, has until I thought about it for my last column. But the things I want to see is, I want to see them having fun. And right now they're pressing. And I think they expected to be as good as we thought they were going to be,
Absolutely.
And when you struggle, if you really care, then the next thing you do is you press. You try to play. You try to do your job and the guy next to you's job too. You try too hard and you can't do anything. And the other thing I think is when you're young and you don't get to hit in August, man, you're afraid to miss a tackle. You got paralysis by analysis. And so then it doesn't look like you're hustling and you're not playing with passion. So it looks like you don't care. Huh?
To some extent, we've had this tackling discussion, I think, the last few years because of how camps are different, but we always seem to have it during a win or a win streak.
Right.
And now when you have a loss, it almost seems like, is tackling magnified? And how much of that also, too, again, not an excuse, but a question, legitimately. Florida State faced two of the more or most mobile quarterbacks in the ACC in Haynes King and Thomas Castellanos. I mean, if you wanted to draw it up to make it difficult to tackle a mobile guy, you wouldn't want to have those guys on your schedule in the first two games.
No, you wouldn't. And but look across college football, and I make the point that as I watched it this past weekend, I had to turn it off after a while because of all the missed tackles and just some teams that you expect to play better didn't. Like Michigan, they had a lot of the same problems Florida State had. But you look at it and you say, well, when we played LSU last year, we didn't have those problems. Well, that was a veteran team.
Absolutely.
This year's team doesn't have the same composition. I looked at Northern Illinois. They had 30 seniors on that team. So they went out and played good against, I tell you, another team that looked like they played good to me was Cal, against Auburn.
On the road, big-time atmosphere.
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's go back to what do I want to see? The one thing I want to see is I want to see the players go ahead and turn themselves loose. And Mike has implored them to do that. Don't worry about missing a tackle. Concern yourself with making a play. And I think he's given them permission to go play hard. And I remember Mickey Andrews used to, Monday to Friday, he was, really tough on him, very demanding. But on Saturday, he had a little different demeanor about it. And, he said a guy can't make a play if you don't allow him to. So he gave him freedom to make mistakes in the game,
Right.
Go make a play. I'd rather see you make a mistake at full speed than to, take yourself out of the play but not give an effort. So that's what I want to see. And I think, I don't know, you can't wave a magic wand and make it happen, but a big play can. If you take any of 10 routine plays in the last two games, and not to point fingers at anybody, but we had drop passes, wide open receiver in the end zone. Yeah. In Georgia Tech, we had a drop touchdown pass. We've had 2 fumbles or 3 fumbles that were on the ground that if we just fall on, it would have prevented 3 touchdowns that beat us. We dropped an interception that led to a touchdown. And, imagine if the kid makes the right pass, DJ makes a good pass, and Williamson catches it in the end zone, and we go up.
Play was right there. Yep.
It's right there. All of a sudden, everybody's running to the end zone. They're hugging each other. They're jumping up and down. The marching chiefs are on their feet playing. The defense is running out to them to celebrate with them. A simple fumble recovery sparks a team. It prevents points, but it also sparks the offense. And I think once we start to make those routine plays, I think you'll see a team that plays with passion and is having fun. I think it's that simple. Keith Jones and I talked about the other night. A season can turn on the simplest thing. And when Keith played, I can remember 77 to 80. I mean, no offense to the offense or defense, but there were some games where neither one of them could piss a drop. You know what I mean? And they'd get a block punt, and it would just,
it's a spark.
It just would spark the whole team. And I think that, to me, that if I could have one thing, I'd like to see us make some routine plays that become big plays. And Keith and I were talking about on their show last night. And how do those plays happen? They happen because you're playing your disciplined assignment, not pressing, but if everybody does their job, that big play is going to come to somebody, right?
Right.
It's not because somebody decided on their own to go make a big play. It's just the ball spilled to them and they had the opportunity. So I think that this stuff is really simple. but it comes from playing disciplined football and playing hard. Hey, Bob, you saw it. I saw it this week and last week. I saw the coaches going back to, a lot of fundamental drills. We saw tackling drills. We saw a lot of, I've been dwelling on the defense, missing tackles, but on the offensive side, Mike's talked about the depth of routes being run, and that when a receiver is supposed to run a 10-yard square in and he's pressing and he runs it at 8 yards, you may have a reception and be 2 yards short of the first down. Or
there's a
you
reason
may
why
have
it's supposed to be 10.
Yeah.
Yep.
And or you may have the balls overthrown not because the ball was overthrown, because the receiver ran it short. And I saw a lot of that kind of fine detail work this week at practice. I've been to enough practices to see when a team has thrown the towel in or have started to point fingers at each other. I haven't seen either side. I've seen. I think they're out there trying to get better at this point. They just need a break, and they need to play discipline, play hard, and when preparation meets opportunity, that's when you get lucky.
And Florida State under Mike Norvell, 9-2, coming off of a bye. That's a really good mark, and there's probably some very good reasons beyond just work hard, commit to the focus, commit to the details. I think Mike Norvell and all the staff have mentioned playing tight. They want to see a team playing fun, having more confidence, and hopefully we will see that on Saturday.
Now, let me ask you, let me flip that. What do you want to see? And you'll say it in a lot fewer words than I did.
I question how much leadership can be fostered and built in the middle of a season. We talked to a lot of players, Jerry, who say you build leadership through fourth quarter drills, map drills, spring, the weight room, all that. How much leadership is going to be built? Blake Nicholson mentioned Justin Cryer is a guy who's trying to speak up. And this is an interesting discussion because I'm trying to bring this up. Can somebody evolve into a leadership role? Justin Cryer didn't play in the first game against Georgia Tech. He gets a lot of reps against Boston College, and maybe it doesn't look good, but now he has that game experience, and he feels comfortable in his personality being able to speak up. I'm not saying it's going to look pretty. I'm not saying it's going to always look pretty or the leaders that you want are going to be there. Guys are maybe trying to find that voice, find that opportunity.
Yeah, I had a conversation after practice with Coach Bowden's longtime secretary, Sue Hall, and this subject came up about leadership or the lack thereof. And she's seen it before. There's been a number of FSU teams over the years. Hey, Kelly, how you doing, buddy?
Shout out Kelly. Thanks for watching again.
Kelly and I were talking about this, and Coach Bowden used to, he would solicit leaders. If he needed leaders and he saw people that weren't leading, he would tell the team, you don't have to be a senior to be a leader. Don't wait until your junior year. You can do it as a freshman. And honestly, Bob, in that 85 class, I saw Odell do it. Odell was a true freshman, he and Deion and that bunch. And they became leaders. And talking to Keith last night, we're talking about that great team Keith Jones played on in 1980 that Kelly also played on. And he talked about the wrath of Reggie Herring. If you weren't doing your job, you're going to hear about it in the huddle from Reggie, red-faced. And, he and Monk, Keith said, got into it. They held each other accountable. That's what leadership is, Right. I mean, holding the guy next to you accountable. You don't have to be a team leader, but you can lead if somebody in that huddle isn't getting the job done, speak up, hold them accountable and ask them to hold you accountable. So I see I think I've also seen some things this week with the too deep, and we can't talk about specifics, but I've seen some guys that were typically number 2, now number 1, and guys that were number 1, not number 1. And I think the coaches are delivering messages to some guys, challenging them to step up. And
it's an open competition for everybody.
It's an open competition for everybody. And you play production. So I got a lot of faith that Mike's brought us from 0 and something. The first year, what were we, 0 and 5 and something like that, for 0 and 4, and then finished
0 and 4 and 21.
Yeah,
0 and 4 and 21, and
lost 3 straight in 22, and then came back and won 6. I mean, he's no stranger to this.
Yeah, Mike Norvell talks about that adversity. I think he's very curious to see how they respond on the field on Saturday. After watching it in his world, he thinks he's seeing it on the practice field during the bye week, during the time leading up to Memphis. Hey, we're going to do a quick commercial break, listen to our sponsors, Backshore Apparel. We thank you all for jumping on board of Late, Alumni Hall, and Mowry Law Firm.
The Backshore. That stretch of fluffy sand just beyond the reach of the salty waves. The place reserved for volleyball nets, cookouts, and the air filled with fun and laughter. Celebrate the Backshore with Backshore Apparel. Grab an amazingly soft and comfy Backshore Apparel beach hoodie to keep you protected from the sun's harmful rays. Or the Backshore revamped trucker hat, a modern twist on a classic favorite. Crafted from moisture-wicking fabrics, ensuring they're lightweight and breathable. Not to mention durable with their unique floating feature. Shop now at backshoreapparel.com. And right now, FSU fans get 10% off your order with code FSU10. Hey Seminole fans, Alumni Hall is your ultimate FSU shopping experience and has moved to a new location off Timberlane Road in Tallahassee. Shop FSU gear from Nike, Champion, New Era, Yeti, and more. Alumni Hall has Seminole gear for the entire family, plus accessories and gifts. Spend $150 and you'll earn $10 off your next purchase with their Hall Pass rewards. Stop by their new location on Timberlane Road near REI or shop anytime online at alumnihall.com. Alumni Hall, where Seminole fans shop. Finding an experienced lawyer you can trust is crucial. With over 50 years of combined litigation experience, the attorneys at Mowry Law Firm are dedicated to providing our clients with exceptional legal services, focusing on car and trucking accidents, premises liability, and wrongful death. Call 904-824-7799, MowryLaw.com.
All right, welcome back on the Osceola Seminole Sidelines. Again, hope you're having a great Wednesday. Looking forward to a good weekend of college football. So we have hit on a lot of topics, from the fan experience, the marching Chiefs. We move on to, Jerry, one of our favorite topics, and that is the business of college athletics.
Oh, gosh.
So we're not going to go deep into every story, but I guess let's start. The roots of this are, we had a nice conversation with Florida State Athletic Director Michael Alford, going back into August, and really put together some questions, then some story ideas, and we've been pushing those out on the Osceola.com, I think, for the last, let's say, 8-10 days. So I think check those out if you will. Just kind of give us your thoughts on some of those topics, because they don't always apply to, say, football, basketball, but we did do something on, say, baseball and softball scholarships. Also, why Florida State is adding women's lacrosse. There is an important business story that's, I won't say developing today, but there was an update with the Florida State ACC lawsuit here in Tallahassee. There was a court hearing of about, let's say, 45 minutes. I believe that was a district court of appeals here in Tallahassee. And I will say that, without getting too deep in the legal weeds, Jerry, there was not an announcement of okay, the judges said this, or agreed with this legal team, disagreed with that legal team, different from, say, when Judge John Cooper was in his courtroom and was saying, hey, I'll take a break, I'll come back with my ruling. This one is a little bit different as far as we are now awaiting whatever decision from this District Court of Appeals. But it's just one step in, again, a very, very long legal process. Again, started right around between Christmas and New Year's last year, moving very slowly. I think you've been maybe thinking or wanting to hear that things are going to pick up, that things will move with some type of pace. We can't give you that news. We can't tell you that it is. But Jerry, this is just part of the process, part of that lawsuit. And, curious just broadly, let's kind of go over maybe some of our thoughts on today and where things stand or where they might be going.
Well, I'm checking up updates on that right now. But, I think, what this hearing was about is still venue, trying to figure out, venue. And the Florida State wants the venue to be in Tallahassee. The ACC believes that it should be in North Carolina. So we have dueling cases going on at the moment, cases. In this case, the ACC, Judge Cooper ruled that Tallahassee was proper venue, which the ACC, of course, appealed.
Right.
And so that was what the DCA heard today. And some of the arguments had to do with, was it a race to filing?
Yeah.
And that was argued today as to whether it was or it wasn't. And some of our lawyer friends seem to think that the ACC's argument wasn't as good as Florida State's argument was, and that might prove to be good for Florida State to be able to maintain venue here in Tallahassee. But until the DCA rules, we won't know that. We'll report that as soon as we hear it. And I think you could probably look to the Osceola maybe by tomorrow for us to have one of our lawyer analysts weigh in on how they think it went. But that's all I'm comfortable saying at this point. I'm not a lawyer, and I wouldn't want to venture anything more than that. But I will say this. It is, I don't want to take any victory laps on bad news, but when this case first broke, we wrote that we could be here a year from now and still not have venue determined. And we're 10 months in.
Right.
We've got, and we're waiting on an appeal on venue still. So this is complicated stuff. And I know there's a lot of Twitter, I don't want to call them trolls, but people out there who think it's simpler than it really is. This is a complex lawsuit. And in one of the stories on the Osceola right now, Michael Alford agreed to that. We asked him, is this case complex? Is this case going to take years? And he was like, yeah, you can say that again. And so, and he elaborated a little bit on that to the extent he can during a lawsuit. But I want to set expectations accurately. This is a complicated lawsuit. And in one of our stories, we get into people think, well, we'll go to mediation and it'll settle.
Good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
How many presidents and chancellors all want different things?
Exactly. This isn't a dispute with my next door neighbor over a hedge. You have 18 universities with diverse interests that, Commissioner Phillips has to corral. before any kind of a settlement can be negotiated. And then you have corporate partners that are invested a lot of money, including ESPN. And so I just think, this is a marathon and not a sprint.
And it's a marathon run over the course of how many years? It's a very slow, I don't want to say we're watching turtles, but it's a very slow legal volley, because every volley takes time to then, okay, how do you respond? You have X number of weeks to respond. Then it's, okay, what's the hearing date? Well, when does the judge have time to hear a case? When are the lawyers available? The lawyers have to fly in because some of them don't live in Tallahassee. There's a lot of little just...
And it's not a lawsuit between two people in the state of Florida. And that was part of the argument in the DCA today is, does Florida law apply? Does North Carolina law apply? Again, I know enough to be dangerous, and I'll rely upon my good friend Steve Brown, who's a retired federal judge, who's cautioned me, don't try to lasso a tornado. Lawsuits can go in any direction at any time. So, look, enjoy your life. Don't let this bother you, but, Christmas will get here someday, but just got to be patient and let the process happen.
Yeah, I think that's the tough thing when everybody wants a resolution or says, hey, it's been 9-10 months and they want to see some kind of resolution. I think one of the funniest things was Alfred asked the rhetorical question of, when people say, why don't you just leave? And he's like, it ain't that easy. It's just not. It's a very, very complex. I think that was our headline of one of our stories. Everything about the FSU ACC lawsuit is complicated, including the timeline. And that was one of the stories that you wrote. Also, the lead story being, it's a transformational time for FSU and college athletics. You wrote about the football operations building, the construction at Doak on the west and the east sides. We've written about the success initiatives from the ACC. What a school can earn as far as achieving football success at the end of a year, whether you're ranked in the CFP's top 25, what does that yield to you? What does basketball success on the men's side potentially yield? Again, we've talked about expanding scholarships, baseball and softball. Transformational time is probably our best way of making something massively complex and putting it into two words.
Yeah. Well, just take the ACC initiative. I mean, a team, if you go make the playoff, you're going to get $4 million, right? Just win the ACC, you get $4 million. Finish in the top 25, you get, is it 3.75 in this AC initiative? I mean, we're talking some big numbers here. And 2 years ago, when Alfred proposed this, it was revolutionary, in the ACC. Big 12's not doing it. SEC doesn't do it. So this is somewhat innovative. And it took, 18 months to get those 18 schools to agree on what the initiative, I mean, that's what I'm talking about. It takes time.
Yes.
But I honestly believe, and I think most people will agree, it would have never happened if Florida State and Clemson hadn't sued the ACC. And I'm not blaming Jim Phillips. Jim Phillips almost needed us to do that to get the attention of 5 or 6 of those schools.
Jim Phillips was dealt this hand when he accepted this job. Let's be straight about it.
And so
good man, respected by a lot of people. I know as fans of Florida State or other schools, you may watch him at a ACC kickoff and kind of shake your head about what you hear, how he reads off a teleprompter. I've seen it all on Twitter, the criticism of Jim Phillips. I will say he's respected by athletics administrators, even though there is the collegial disagreement. Is that fair?
Yeah. And I think, well, Dave Hart, who was former FSU athletic director and then at Alabama athletic director at Tennessee, his son is the athletic director at SMU right now. Dave's a consultant among athletic directors and head coaches today. And we speak on a periodic basis. He has the ultimate respect for Jim Phillips. I mean, really, Phillips should have gotten the Big Ten job.
Right.
And so you're not dealing with an incompetent commissioner, nor are you dealing with an immoral human being. I mean, he's a good man. And Alford says that in the story. But I think sometimes, Bob, when you're the commissioner of 18 schools and you get behind the microphone, you got 18 you're speaking to 18 different people when you're talking to the press. And so I think sometimes you can ameliorate your words. You don't want to piss off Wake Forest on this subject when you're answering that question. On another question, if I answer this way, I'm going to piss off Florida State, And so I think Phillips, he's got to navigate. You got to put it between the goalposts when he's in a press conference. And, I want a man to speak straight and, just tell the truth. But I think, to navigate a conference with really diverse interests, you got to be careful with what you say. You get a lot of coach speak in those press conferences.
And they take on the sound of politicians. I thought John Swofford for years could have been a senator or governor. Listening to him, you close your eyes and you're like, wow, this is very political. He didn't really say a whole lot there. Sometimes Jim Phillips does that too.
Yeah, he does. I mean, and I'm not sure. I don't know. Is there anybody who doesn't?
Well,
are there any successful ones who don't? So I'm not sure, but I know that Alford, in his stories we wrote, he respects Jim and says that this has never been a relationship problem. It's just a math problem. So the ACC initiative, going back to that, it can help bridge this gap, right? Because the Big Ten, the Big Ten and the SEC don't have an initiative. They're going to get paid $40, and so this initiative gives every school in the ACC an opportunity to bridge that gap a little bit, or a lot. I mean, if you were to win the national championship, the ACC initiative pays that school $25 million. I mean, that's real money. If all you do is go to a bowl game and finish in the top 25, I think that it's about $5.5 million. 2.75 for the top 25, 2.75 for a bowl bid. So,
it depends on how many schools finish in the ACC in the top 25. It's almost like a piece of the pie. I think that's when I asked somebody at the ACC office, is it similar to, you can't sometimes give set numbers because you could have 5 ranked in the top 25 at the end of the year. You could have 6 ranked in the top 25. So the pie adjusts based on football success. Well,
here's the thing too. It's an investment in better football. I mean, if an AD says, man, if our football team get in the top 25, we're going to get paid.
Right.
That's an incentive to invest in football. Hey, if they go to a bowl game and get in the top 25, that's real money. That's school. That AD is going to say, yeah. And then when they do it and they get the check, I mean, it just reinforces, let's invest more in football. And that's what the ACC needs. It's a smart investment. Huh?
The first time Jim Phillips came down to Tallahassee, it was an off-the-record discussion, but then we heard him say this on the record consistently. He said, this conference has to be better, has to invest more in football. It was a not so delicate way of saying, stop thinking basketball is king and just invest everything in basketball. It was about football facilities, football coaching hires, football investment. It wasn't yet an NIL discussion because that wasn't legally
Right.
part of the discussion when we first met him. But I think NIL is somewhat tangentially part of that discussion. He has pushed for
Yeah.
football to be elevated in the view of, yes, a lot of Tobacco Road schools that maybe don't typically prioritize football. I think you know who we're talking about.
Right. Well, the thing is, when we first joined the ACC back in the day in '92, it paid more than the SEC at that time because of the NCAA basketball contract. The money was in basketball back then. Well, Phillips is smart enough to see the money's moved, right?
Right.
And so, what do you do when the money moves? You move your money with it. And so, he brings an emphasis on football, no question. So this initiative, I think, helps, and it shows me they're willing to be creative, and that was not something we saw at all during the Swofford era.
Agree.
So some of the other things we get into this in the business thing is we get into going into it with scholarship expansion, roster expansion, and other sports, football included, football, baseball, softball. We talked about why did Florida State, with all these financial pressures, start women's lacrosse? And, Alford answered that question. One is you have a Title IX mandate. We receive federal funding from the Department of Education, and, we have to keep up with Title IX mandate. And lacrosse is an up-and-coming sport in Florida. It was a good choice. If you're going to start a team, that's a good one to start. And so there's far-reaching topics that Alford took the time to, and we've parsed them out. The real challenge here, y'all, is the finances. With the most recent House settlement, which still has to be approved by the courts, you could see a $30 million revenue share, $22.5 million revenue share with the student athletes. And if Florida State were to expand all the scholarships in those sports, it bangs you another $5 million in scholarship costs. So where does that money come from? And for the SEC and Big Ten, well, it comes from the media rights.
It's baked in.
Which means this lawsuit is that much more important since this case came through.
And let's just put that in perspective for a second. When you mention $30 more million has to be found in August of 25, and then the additional scholarship money, the athletic budget for Florida State is in the neighborhood of $100 million.
I'd say 135 million.
We're ballparking it, right? Because I'm asking you on the spot. But I just want listeners and readers to understand we're talking about a 30 million number, a 5 million number, and you're operating under a budget of 130-ish million. So these are big, big numbers that athletic directors are going to have to figure out, where are we going to find that money? Because it's got to be found to some extent.
Yeah. I mean, and what, in this Alford talks about revenue creation, which is why they're doing the west side of the stadium, that the money generated through donations and tickets will help pay the bond issue on a stadium renovation that was overdue, and build a $135 million football building, and leave a little bit of a surplus of revenue to go towards the budget. So you've got to start doing things like that. The stadium needs to be better utilized outside of football season, and generate revenue. I mean, even in this story, and I won't go into details because we need to wrap up, but
we'll put some links in the YouTube description.
Yeah.
So if you are watching, we'll have some links there. You guys can read the stories. Yep.
They're looking at venture capital either as a buyout or to bridge the financial gap until they can get out. So it's a very comprehensive series of stories.
Yeah, I appreciate Jerry taking the bull on this one, and it's an out of control bull too, right?
I'm good for bull.
Hey, thanks again for watching. I know it was a little bit of a longer show than maybe you all were expecting, and not as much football, but we did get into football. We wanted to get into the fan experience. Tuesday show, you got a lot of football from our Osceola football analyst. Thursday show coming at you 3 p.m. on the Osceola's YouTube, Facebook, and Pat Burnham and Kurt Weiler's Twitter channel. So, hey, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you're catching us on Apple or Spotify, if you are not subscribing, please do. It's really easy. Just click the subscribe button. Make sure you get the alerts so that you can get all of our videos. If you prefer the podcast, that's great too. Spotify, Apple will take care of you. Again, hope you all are having a great Wednesday. Take care. We will talk to you all Thursday.